Hello and welcome. You're watching NDTV Profit, and this is as part of our Budget 2024, the Takeoff series. This is the post-budget interview that we're having with the Revenue Secretary, Mr. Sanjay Malhotra. Sir, very warm welcome to you. Thank you for talking to us today.
My pleasure.
And a lot of the conversation happened yesterday on the numbers, and the takeaway was the numbers are realistic. And while always we begin the budget conversation with whether they are conservative, my concern is really to look at the corporate tax vis-a-vis the income tax and the predictions therefore. The beginning of the year, we saw a bit of a lull in the way corporate tax was in the first two quarters. That slowly did pick up as we saw later. But when we see the revised estimates, there's not a lot of change. Personal taxes, on the other hand, has seen quite a bit of growth. There is a 13% growth that we compare if we compare budget estimates to budget estimates again in FY25, there's about 28% that's a bit of a change. So just to understand the pace of growth that's outstripping in income tax, how do you see that and what is it a factor of?
It's a very positive sign. And for that, I need to commend all the taxpayers and thank them, as the Honorable Finance Minister also did in her speech. Now, primarily, I think it's the benefits we are gaining. We are getting to see the benefits of the hard work that has been done in the last 5 years. It's not just 1 year work, that is giving us this kind of a result. And what is that work? It is primarily the simplification of our rate structures, the rationalization, the making compliance easier, the returns easier, technology, use of technology, use of AIS, the 26 AIS that we give out to our taxpayers to help them to file their returns basis the incomes that we have from third-party sources. The updated returns that has helped us to gain about 4,600 crore rupees. We set up a center now to pursue with our taxpayers the old demands. So it's a combination of all these factors which are more relevant, for the personal income tax, where the taxpayers need, that nudge, need that help, need that information that we provide to them, and make it, easier for them to pay the taxes. That has helped us in seeing this kind of a buoyancy that we see.
Right. But would it be fair to say that corporate taxes, usually they tend to outstrip whatever estimates, budget estimates that are there? Is there perhaps a slowdown in terms of corporate taxes?
No. If you compare it with the GDP, nominal GDP growth rate, which is 8.9%, expected to be 8.9% for this year, and if the corporate taxes are growing at 13%, obviously there is no slowdown, isn't it?
In terms
of course, PIT is doing better, and why it is doing better, I try to explain.
Right.
So it is not really a case of slowing down of the corporate taxes, but it is more a case of improved tax collection efficiencies, better tax compliance by our taxpayers, the individual personal income taxpayers, because of which you see that now the personal income tax numbers are more than the corporate tax numbers.
Very tied to that particular point in terms of improving the experience for the taxpayer. Post the budget, while talking to us, you had mentioned that the goal now is to improve the experience while looking at widening and deepening the tax base without changing the rates. Now, I want to come to that. In terms of how to achieve that, like you said, one, of course, the measures that is to facilitate taxpayer experience. But is there anything else also that you intend to?
Absolutely. You have absolutely, hit the nail on the head. What we believe in this government is that if we repose trust in the taxpayers, whether it is, GST that you see today, there is huge buoyancy. There's a buoyancy of 1.25 for the 4 years after the GST was implemented. And similarly now, we see the benefits of all the measures that have been taken coming in the direct taxes side. So it is this trust that has been placed, and the intrusive kind of enforcement that we earlier used to do reduced number of scrutiny, and make it at the same time easier for the taxpayers to make compliances, use more and more of technology, gain access to third-party information which is undisputable, and show it, give it to our taxpayers for their own benefit, so that when they file the returns, they do not forget, they do not omit those incomes which they otherwise, might have escaped their notice. And so going forward, we are going to continue to work on increasing the use of technology, improving tax certainty. Again, this is another factor we feel, which has helped in improving taxes, because the taxes that you get today are the taxes which actually, end up in our revenues.
Right.
If we have higher taxes, if we have uncertain and not so very clear, ambiguous provisions, hoping that we'll get higher revenues tomorrow and they end up in disputes, they don't help us. Case in point being online gaming. Online gaming, there was a lot of doubts, a lot of clarity was not there. The online gaming companies were depositing taxes in a particular way, interpreting the law in a particular way, and our tax authorities felt, no, it should be much higher. But we were not getting the revenues. And the GST Council took a decision, a brave decision, a practical decision. It, in a way, lowered the effective taxation, because it said it is 28%, but it is 28% on the payment and not on each bet.
Each bet, right.
And we today see benefits thereof. We are now getting a revenue. We have seen a jump of about 5 times. So revenues today,
from
are
online gaming?
From online gaming itself. Okay. So this is just one example that you provide tax certainty, stability to the taxpayers, and that helps, in improving the revenues. And this is something that we'll continue to work upon.
Just on that, in terms of the revenue growth in online gaming coming from that, this was effective only 1st October. So when you say the 5 times increase, is this a monthly that you're seeing?
Yeah, so we have figures now for 3 months.
Okay.
Although it was implemented from 1st October, 4 months have elapsed, but the revenues are actually paid after the end, by the 20th of the next month.
Right.
So we have now revenue collection for 3 months, which is October paid in November, December and January, so 3 months. And so in these 3 months, we have got a revenue of 3,470 crore rupees.
Okay.
In comparison, in the last 3 months preceding, 1st October, we got revenues of only 605 crore rupees. So this is a jump, as I said, of 5 times. And we now hope to get a revenue of about 13 to 14,000 crore if we are able to maintain the same pace.
Right.
And may I also tell you that the revenue in the year 22-23 from online gaming companies is estimated to be about 1,600 crore rupees. So this is a jump of about 12,000 crore rupees annually.
This also speaks for the concerns that were there in terms of this industry growing post the GST tax that would be levied.
Yeah, but they are paying the taxes, they are, and the revenues are accruing to both the center and the states.
And the states. Coming to a pointer that you had touched a little while ago in terms of improving the tax rates, and while we are on that subject, the new tax regime is one thing that I wanted to ask about. When we spoke to you this time last year, you had told us that corporates, there is about 60% migration to the new tax regime. How much has that changed? And in personal taxes, I understand AY 24-25 only, it will be mandated. But has there been any shift you've seen so far that is sort of visible?
On the corporate taxes?
Corporate taxes.
On the corporate taxes, we have a 57% of the income from revenues from corporate tax now comes from the new scheme, which is the 22% scheme.
Okay.
New scheme for personal income tax, the figures will be known only next year, as you rightly said.
Right. And coming to perhaps I would like to take from that the corporate tax. There was a concessional tax expectation, considering that the concessional tax for manufacturing units, its sunset clause was in March this year.
Yeah, so it was a sunset. You yourself said it. It was a sunset. But let me try to explain this. I have three things to say in this regard. One, a sufficient period, a sufficient window was given in 2019 when this concessional tax regime for certain new manufacturing sectors was introduced. So it was a long period of 4 years, and it was further extended because of COVID. This was primarily because it is expected that it will take few years for large investments to actually fructify on the ground, from the drawing board to putting them on ground, and so that's why this was a sufficiently large period. Secondly, now if we compare our corporate tax rates with that of economies comparable our size, we are very competitive with 22% corporate tax rate. Thirdly, the whole ecosystem. Tax is just one factor in making an investment decision, in making a choice. One has to look at the whole ecosystem and the number of steps, the various measures that the government has taken over the previous 5 years, and even prior to that. Whether it is in terms of ease of doing business, whether it is in terms of attracting investment through our PLI or the PNP, or whether it is in terms of measures related to, say, GST, for example, because that itself has also helped in reducing logistic costs, and also reducing taxation on the indirect taxation, making it one market. Whether you look at IBC, whether you look at the whole digital public infrastructure that we have in our country, I think the whole ecosystem is really geared up now today for attracting, given the rates that we have, is conducive for attracting investment.
Coming to another sort of a change that we see in the finance bill is the just a codifying of the LRS, the TCS on LRS. This was already notified via before, and it was also clarified at two different points. The effective date was October 1st, but it was put on hold for a particular period of time. Now that we find it in the finance bill, what is the effective period? Would it apply from
Yeah, it applies from 1st October. So whatever were the rates which were notified through the press release in June, effective from 1st October, they apply. So which means that tour packages less than 7 lakh rupees, they do not come under its ambit, and tour packages less than 7 lakh, I think, is 5%, and beyond that, is 20%. And similarly, the others under LRS, the 7 lakh limit has again been reintroduced for them, and it's only after 7 lakh that the 20% rate kicks in, as was given in the press note. So there is no change. There is no change. It is just to regularize whatever was included in the press release at that point of time.
Okay. And as a point of clarity, when we're talking overseas tour packages, if it is perhaps an Indian travel provider and a foreign travel provider, is there a particular difference?
No, there is no difference. The law applies equally to them.
Okay.
And so you may ask me, how do we implement the law for foreign websites, etc., who may not have a permanent establishment? So I would like to say that the law applies equally to them as well. If they flout the law, we are well within our means to take action against them. to take penal action against them and even to get them blocked. MITI has powers for reasons of security, national security, economic security is also included in national security. And so if laws are flouted by anyone, whether they have a PE or not, we will take action against them.
I understand. Now, slightly deviating perhaps out of syllabus from the interim budget, wanted to understand windfall gains has been something that we followed quite religiously. Every 2 weeks we get that update. Do we have some sense on what has been the collections in the current fiscal so far in terms of windfall gains tax?
Yeah, so we don't have, we don't have a separate head, first of all. Let me clarify, we do not have a separate head for what you call windfall tax or what we call SAED, the special additional excise duty that we levy on certain petroleum products. But our estimate is that last year we got revenue of about 26,000 crore. But this year, because the crude prices, you are aware, have been lower than what they were last year. So we expect only about 50% of the revenues. And so that is one of the reasons why you see that the excise duty collections are lower than what they were last year.
And dipping slightly into GST as well, this year has been a year of spate of notices for a lot of companies. However, like it was explained, some of this was also because the adjudication period and the particular timeline was coming to an end.
You're right.
What happens now, considering that a lot of them have raised representations to the Department of Revenue? Where does this go from here?
As you have mentioned, if there is a flood, first of all, let me clarify that the flood, if there is any, does not pertain to central tax authorities. Because the central tax authorities have been very cautious in this regard. So if there are notices, then it is primarily coming from the state authorities. We have less than 1% as per our risk management criteria. We are doing scrutiny only for less than 1% of the total taxpayer base, that is with the central tax authorities. There may be cases, yes, there may be cases, there may be some states where the number of notices are on the higher side. Now, this is primarily because in those states, in the VAT days, they would be doing an assessment of each and every return, 100%. But in GST, it is more, of a self-certified return which is submitted, and then, it's only on risk basis that some of those returns are picked up for scrutiny. So those states which had a history of doing 100% tax assessment and scrutinizing each and every return, it is primarily in those states that the number of notices are large. Having said that, and the third reason, of course, is because, the deadlines were approaching. So, they have issued those notices. We would like that these states also, going forward at least, they try to adopt a risk-based approach for doing scrutinies, so that the number of assessments are manageable. And if they are manageable, then the quality of the assessment is better. There is more likelihood that those demands that actually come out fructify into actual revenue and do not end up in litigation. So the future course really is to have a good, accurate, as far as possible, risk management strategy for picking up these cases. So it will be our endeavor to impress upon those states to pursue a risk-based approach towards scrutiny. Lastly, of course, these are only notices. Hopefully, the taxpayers will will respond to them, and these are not final assessment orders.
Right. But perhaps the action to perhaps adopt a risk-based approach will maybe taken up in the next GST Council meeting?
I cannot give a timeline to it. I'm expressing my own views here. It's for the states, to follow whatever, because of it's a federal country, it's a federal tax. It's not a federal tax. I mean, it's a tax which is imposed both by the states and by the center. Right. So it is for the states, themselves to decide as to what kind of a strategy they adopt, depending on, and there can be varying circumstances. If the evasion in certain states is very, very high, compliances are very, very poor, then there may be cases of states where they may have to, do more, where the notices will be, on the higher side. We cannot, have a one-size-fit-all approach for all the states, because it's a large country with varying trade and tax compliance practices. Having said that, I am saying the approach going forward more and more should be on risk-based approach, and to make our taxpayers comply with the laws right then. Because if we leave it to audit, if we leave it to scrutiny tomorrow, then the possibilities of that revenue actually coming to us is low, because mostly it's going to end up in disputes. So our effort is to plug those leakages and to make our taxpayers aware of the provisions and make them more and more compliant.
And before we leave, just a few hours ago, the ITR forms were announced. It was made available today. On that note, something that was in the public memory was a common ITR. It was bought for public consultation, I think shortly before you took over the charge as the Secretary of Revenue. So anything on that, when can we perhaps expect it, or on which stage it is? I want to leave with that.
I will not be able to give you the exact timelines. I'll have to check with the board as to where we are over there. But yes, as I said, as the Honorable Finance Minister said, we would like to keep improving taxpayer services. This is one of the announcements. This is one of the measures. And it will be our endeavor to put it online and make it available to our taxpayers as soon as possible. But you are aware, that this is something which will be actually of use for returns, next year. So there is time with us. It's not as if we don't have time. There is still, at least 2 months with us for the next assessment year to begin.
Right. On that note, thank you so very much for joining us. Always a pleasure talking to you. And with that, this is a wrap on this particular edition. Stay tuned with us for the next such exclusive. You've been watching NDTV Profit.